Hi, welcome to the musical show where I talk about music for way too long. Let's just get into it now because last week was fucking huge. Um, Starting off with some albums I missed, just to either just because I wanted to listen to them or to like complete the lists of like best and worst. Starting off with Anohni and the Johnsons. I don't know how to pronounce that, but My Back Was a Bridge for You to Cross by them is the first album I'm going to talk about, which is a gut wrencher for sure. The lyrics are heartbreaking and the vocals are unique and are so special over the utterly beautiful instrumentals, especially on tracks such as Rest, which progresses perfectly into that beautiful ending at, well, the end. One of the best songs of the year for sure. Realistically, I could genuinely have the top two songs. I don't, but I could realistically have the top two songs of the year both be called Rest, because obviously the Foo Fighters as well, with that amazing track. To be honest, my only gripe with this album is that some instrumentals either bore me or are just like uninteresting and didn't add much, especially on tracks such as It Must Change, which to be honest was quite a boring opener in my eyes. And it was far too long for what it was. 4 minutes of that. Yeah. This sadly did happen in like 2 or 3 tracks, such as Why I'm Alive, which Why I'm Alive is amazing, but I have a feeling it didn't reach its full potential as a song. Overall, though, this is compelling in its sadness and uniqueness, vocally anyway. God's sake. And it's a wonderful listen. 8.7 out of 10. Moving on to JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown's EP, the DLC pack, the deluxe for Scaring the Hose, which introduced 4 new tracks into the mix. Which, yeah, it's an EP that was mostly just basic JPEG stuff. Nothing that he didn't do on Scaring the Hose is really here, and thus it's a collection of good songs and not great ones. No Times a Million is the only song with any innovation on the whole album, and with no surprise, on the whole EP, sorry, and with no surprise, it's the best song, with an interesting approach used to the Danny Brown performances, which I think was amazing, and the beat was fantastic as well. But the 2 songs in the middle, especially Tell Me Where to Go, were a bit of a bore. The opener, Guess What Bitch We Back Oh, is just a banger that seems typical of the duo. Great song, nothing more. But yeah, it's solid, but you're not missing that much if you skip it. 7.1 out of 10. 7.3, sorry. Out of 10. Moving on to the albums I decided to re-listen, starting off again with JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown with Scaring the Hose for the 3rd time. And this time it actually has grown on me. Tracks such as Kingdom Hearts Key and Garbage Pail Kids show JPEG at his best when it comes to production, and the duo at their best when it comes to performances. Rapping-wise, their deliveries and performances overall were both superb and worked with the abrasiveness of the overall album really well, but there were corny bars, obviously. The Red Veil feature, as much as I still think it could have been one of the best this decade and it wasn't, was still fucking amazing. It's genuinely just that I'm not crazy about a couple of tracks that seem to follow a formula, such as like Orange Juice Jones, or I'm just not a fan of Jack Harlow Combo Mill, which for me still is just a bit of a dud. Ho, Heaven on Earth also seemed to go a bit too far when it came to being experimental with the beat, because as much as it's still a great song, chill. It did mostly work though, but it didn't fully work, do you get me? But yeah, overall, fantastic album that has some unbelievable production. Very unique. 8.6 out of 10. Moving on to Jessie Waves, That Feels Good, which is a bloody fantastic listen. The instrumentals are solid, and this is modern, sort of like new disco at its best. Her vocals are phenomenal, especially on tracks such as Pills, where she shows her range, to say the least. My only issue is that on some instrumentals, as good as they are, it just feels like done before. And it doesn't bring much to the table that isn't already there. Which a lot of the album doesn't, but like it still brings a hell of a lot of fire, nonetheless. The music may not be the type of music that is like absolutely special or like genre defining, but it does what it needs to do, and it does what it needs to do pretty well. Insanely fun album, 8.5 out of 10. Speaking of insanely fun albums, Jaleel with Real Raw. Jaleel, yeah. Fucking shit, ad-lib. I don't care, I still hate it. This is a raw, for sure. It lives up to its album title. An extremely fun album. The beats are great and Jaleel's voice and energy is perfectly suited to the area rap he is in, and damn does he show his talent, especially on tracks such as Tamale, where he plays with his voice a hell of a lot. He features himself, for God's sake. Or like Thor, which is one of the best album openers all year. That is up there with like The Grants off the Lana Del Rey shit. or spoiler alert, Hyena off Utopia. And yeah, as much as there are dud beats such as the one in Kane, which I think was a pretty underwhelming ending to such a great album, the bars were as they usually are in this sort of music, and like they weren't terrible at all. And there were some damn good hooks. There is a lot more positive than negative. It has its duds and imperfections and like dud beats here and there, but it's just such an enjoyable listen, man. 8.3 out of 10. Moving on to Chat Pal and Nerva's EP, Brothers in Christ, and yeah, I love both bands, but they didn't go out of their comfort zone at all. Pretty run-of-the-mill EP, but what I will say is tracks, so it still is a really good EP, aside from the insanely boring closer cut. Nerva defo had the best song here with The Nerve, which is genuinely a fantastic track, but their opener, Kicks in the Sky, was pretty uninteresting, as much as it was still a good song. Only track I haven't mentioned is King, which is a great song with a fantastic ending, but not much else to say. There's one amazing track from both bands, and then a slight dud, in a nutshell. And it makes a pretty great EP, even if it is pretty run-of-the-mill. 7.8 out of 10. Moving on to IDK's F65, which has grown on me. In this album, IDK does showcase a lot of versatility, but shows that he can only really make the casual stuff, and the basic stuff in all of them. The man sometimes shows that he can sing, but sometimes he has terrible vocal performances. It's very inconsistent at the bottom, for sure. And as for the trap stuff, which I think was the best, showcased most of the highlights on the album, the beat on Pit Stop, for example, was hard as hell. Obviously, 851 on top had that beat switch. It somehow had a solid Rich the Kid feature in there. Obviously, that's the best song of the album, easily. And the features were pretty solid. Snoop Dogg on the 20-second interlude was somehow pretty compelling. Music Soul Child was good in both of his features. And the others were pretty good as well. NLE Chopper, for example, was really good. However, most interludes didn't really add anything at all and didn't really need to be there. And the concept, I think, of the album could have been done so much better, because he's here at the start, and then about like 3/4 of the album goes by, and then all of a sudden you get it on every single song. It could have been so much better paced, I think. And I feel like some tracks didn't reach their full potential as just tracks, and there were some terrible parts. However, still great, and a testament to IDK's talent. 7.7 out of 10. Moving on to Ray's My 24th Century Blues, which is still a pretty fun, triumphant debut for Ray, and the mere existence of the album is a testament to Ray's strength and determination, and as much as it has grown off me, it's still pretty damn quality. To me, when it's not being introspective or like heavily feminist, it's just basic sort of like pop trap, I guess, that has okay rapping. Sometimes it's awful, but usually it's alright. The lyricism is pretty corny, or it's just like traditional pop. That is uninteresting, even if it is pretty damn good traditional pop. And there are also just duds such as Black Mascara, which had some piss poor auto-tune vocals. I don't get why she uses auto-tune. She showed on a fair few songs that she didn't need it at all. She used it far too heavily on this album. She's a damn good vocalist on some tracks, you know. She shows her vocal talent. It's got a hell of a lot of flaws and could have been better for sure, this album overall, but it's a defiant triumph of a debut due to its just mere existence and its pretty quality. 7.7 out of 10. Moving on to Young Nudy's Gumbo. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking giving this a 3.9. The beats are great and Nudy's flows just sound so good. He absolutely smoothly just gets onto the... Okay, we're back. Nudy goes so smoothly with the fucking trapeze, holy shit. And what I will say is that Peaches and Eggplants is still a dog shit song. The 21 Savage feature is awful, the beat's terrible. Young Nudy doesn't have the best performance, it's just trash. But you cannot deny the quality of tracks such as MRE or Pop Roast, especially beat-wise. Great album overall, with everything usually being great, but when it's not great, it's trash. That's just the one thing that brings it down. Thankfully though, moments like this aren't the most common. 7 out of 10. You'll probably hear me do the nose thing a lot, sauce. Moving on to Gunna with A Gift and a Kiss. When the Beat Fire and Gun, but fuck when the beat fire but gonna start rapping. The album, basically. The mellowness of the production is amazing and refreshing, and the song transitions were beautiful, but Gunna can't rap. And Ruben's tracks such as Born Rich, he did get away with it for the most part. He was on beat and passable, but tracks such as Rodeo Drip could have used a lot less sleepy performances, more akin to the one on like Back to the Moon, which is just such a good song, man. There are bangers, and the production and beats are phenomenal, but Gunna, he's just not a very good rapper, is he? 6.9 out of 10. Could have probably been like an 8 or a 9 with a solid rapper in there. Moving on to Kelela with Raven, which has grown off me heavy, by the way. An album heavily reliant on atmosphere over musical quality. Music, while nice and soothing, is not memorable at all on anything. And it's not even interesting anywhere either, aside from like maybe Divorce, which had such a beautiful instrumental, man. Most though, such as the one in Contact, are just boring. The vocals are beautiful, and it's a nice listen, but you don't really want to crave to go back. It's just background music, basically, and I mean that as like a big flaw of the album. 6.8 out of 10. And finally, before we can finally get onto the albums that dropped this week, is Janelle Monáe's The Age of Pleasure. Has to be one of the most boring albums I've heard all year. I hate it. The instrumentals are insanely boring, and the features are terrible. The lyrics are cringe, and this is such an absolute like flop of an album by one of the best jazz pop artists possibly ever. So you can do so much better than just entering the mainstream and making boring ass pop music that doesn't differentiate you from anyone else. Best thing about Janelle Monáe has been that she does cool stuff instead of just the boring shit, and now she's doing the boring shit. It's real shit. For example, Lipstick Lover is cringe and is just a terrible song. And some of the vocals on who I think is CK on Know Better were painful to the ears. Only good songs were Flow, which was just a trap banger. She can actually semi-rap. And I Only Have Eyes for Two. Even if that track has a chorus that just makes no real sense. The instrumental is just amazing, and her vocals are beautiful on it. Overall, massive slog, awful. 2.8 out of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 albums are to be mentioned from last week that I listened to. Starting off with the bottom, which is Anne Marie's Unhealthy. Normal version, 13 tracks long. It's 13 tracks too many, for sure. This album's awful. The instrumentals are trying to be original and quirky, but ended up sounding like a carbon copy of versions of the same trick that actually work. The lyrics are awful and incredibly cringe, and the vocals, to put it simply, are unbearable, and the autotune on them sounds awful. I'd rather a cat be the vocalist on the album and make it a fair bit better. Some of the vocals here are some of the worst I've heard all year, genuinely. But in spite of this, there are moments that are solid, such as the progression of the closer, Never Loved Anyone Before, the instrumental on the chorus in the title track Unhealthy, and Irish Goodbye, just in general, which is the only good song here. Overall, awful album that had glimpses of potential ruined by the utter disease of the vocals and the lyrics. That's how bad it is. 1.7 out of 10. Moving on to Tech N9ne with Bliss, who was somehow not the worst album this week. Because what the fuck is this? The rapping was as great as expected. The concept and skits were really inaccurate in displaying Tech as some sort of lyrical mastermind when he's got the bar writing ability of Stevie Wonder as a toddler if he had one arm. And had the IQ of a peanut. Had the IQ of one of my dogs. Because my dogs are stupid. Amongst this, the beats were often basic and boring and didn't do anything interesting whatsoever. And there's, little positive to say at all, apart from Tell Everyone, which had a nice sample and was genuinely a great track. I'm not even kidding. But that aside, it was awful. Especially at songs such as Bro So Mo, Lemony Snicket's, which would be awful and terrible lyrically, because it has such a terrible chorus, without the Siri voice from a decade ago starting off the track. And every 30 seconds at the start of like each verse, there being a fucking impression of the SpongeBob narrator. You're just vibing to the song, and all of a sudden, 2 years later, it's fucking awful, man. That song is unbearable, as was many others. To no one's surprise, it sucked. 1.8 out of 10. Moving on to Ty Fontaine and SGR with You Came, which is insanely forgettable. The beats are mid and have been done before multiple times. The rapping is just there. Ty does nothing here that everyone else in Rage does too to differentiate him from like a early Destroy Lonely or a Sofago. for example. An insanely forgettable and insanely trash album, but Fleek is a good song at least. 2 out of 10. Moving on, the ratings are gonna jump. With Aphex Twins EP, Blockbox Live Recorder 21F / In a Room 7F760, which is clearly a group of 4 demos that sound like a group of 4 demos. It feels a bit empty, soulless, uninteresting, and incomplete throughout, as that's kind of what they are. And then there's In a Room 7F760, the third track, which feels a lot more complete and layered, and is 10 times better than anything else the EP has to offer, and saves it from being like mid as hell. But yeah, that aside, it's really not worth your time at all. Who wants to wait for a Aphex Twin project for 5 years, and then all it be is an EP with 4 demos? And if they're not 4 demos, they definitely sound like they are. 6.8 out of 10. Moving on to Post Malone's Austin, which is an impressive album. That is definitely album of the summer. It does what it needed to do. The vocals are solid, especially those like sort of orchestral-ish sounding ones, the ones that try to go for like a gospel vibe, especially on tracks like Something Real. But for the love of God, the man can sing. Stop using that awful reverb and the awful autotune, because it just makes them sound 10 times worse. Instrumentals, while they are basic as hell, they're pretty damn fire. The guitars genuinely sound amazing though on this album, trust me. And it's nice to finally see Post Malone make an album that matches the potential. The album shows that you don't need to be experimental to be good. It simply does the job better than other pop albums, and as I said, it had beautiful, genuine instrumentals. You can hear the effort. On the closer, Laugh It Off, it just progresses into such a beautiful ending, and honestly, it left me lost for words. It's its best song by far. The lyricism, though, isn't the best, and it does show a more corny track, such as Green Thumb, which has the lyrical context you would have guessed from the title, and it didn't sound very good. To summarise, great summer album that has decent vocals, just awful vocal effects, solid instrumentals and production, and yeah, it's just basic. And it just does not the best lyricism, in a nutshell. They're the main reasons why the album is brought down. Great album though, nonetheless. 7.6 out of 10. Moving on to Zell's Kaleidosphere. General Platinum's feature on General's Comment. As much as he didn't even use a microphone, that's how much effort was put into it. It was listenable, as much as it was cringe and kind of awful. That's as good as you're going to get with that fella. And as much as it is just a collection of beats, they finally don't sound cheap and are pretty damn good. Especially like an Alien Genocide or a Zip. However, some beats do drag on for a little bit too long, such as Enter the Kaleidosphere, and others such as Black Hole and messes and fumbles of good ideas. Overall though, solid. And there are great beats to freestyle to if that's like your thing. I can't rap though, soz. 7.6 out of 10. And yeah. Moving on to Carly Rae Jepsen's The Loveliest Time, which is a massive return to form. I didn't like The Loneliest Time at all because of how robotic her vocals sounded and how much auto-tune and shit was placed into her vocals, which just sounded awful. And also made no sense because she's a great vocalist. The auto-tune is definitely present to some extent in the odd track here and there, but to a lesser extent even when it's there. And she has some great vocal performances here, such on like Stadium Love. And they also never sound robotic like they do on The Loneliest Time. Tracks such as Collage were beautiful and had great production. It just really worked. Although the way empty sounded tracks such as Shadow. And the way traditional tracks such as like Kamikaze for Carly. However, Psychedelic Switch tried to have some weird and cool, interesting vibe, and while it did, as an actual song, it was not the best. The lyricism was terrible in that fucking chorus, man. That and a few other tracks aside, though, with some awful lyricism, it wasn't too bad. Overall, massive step up from The Loneliest Time, as the production is pretty much perfect, most instrumentals are phenomenal, and the vocals actually sound human this time and really good. It's just either empty, run-of-the-mill, or corny. However, all of these moments are few and far between, and it's a fantastic album. 8.2 out of 10. Moving on to the midweek drop of Lil Shine's EP, Lovesick, which is one of the few actually amazing plug projects. The production is nothing short of superb throughout, and tracks such as The Clothes Are Worthless and Jean Soaked are the best plug tracks ever made, to be honest. However, there are some pretty uninteresting tracks, such as Too Much, which do everything every other song in the fucking genre do. However, production is just too good, and overall, it's a fantastic EP. 8.4 out of 10. But at the top, to absolutely nobody's surprise, is Travis Scott's Utopia, which very much exceeded my expectations. The beats were nothing short of superb, and Mike Dean and all the other producers on it, such as like Metro, really showed how good their producing is, musically and atmospherically, and it created such a good experience from start to finish. As much as the lyrics did every so often leave a lot to be desired, they were usually tolerable, and the Rob 49 feature on Topia Twins, while it technically has awful lyricism, it's fun as fuck. I don't care. But, as I said, the man knows how to use good beats, and the production on some songs were nothing short of phenomenal, especially in, say, the opener Hyena, or the very cinematic Circus Maximus, which it does have good production, even if the beat is basically just Black Skinhead. I kind of like it for its lack of originality, though, in a weird way. It's cool. And The Weeknd sounds amazing on it. And Travis is also willing to match the vibes of his features, such as Beyonce on like Do Resto Echoes and Bad Bunny on K-pop, just to make them better. I'm not sure I really want to hear fucking Bad Bunny over some weird melodic trap shit or one of the weird like boom bap beats, such as like the one on Hyena or the one towards the end of Schizo. Onto the features. Pretty eclectic, even though I've already mentioned the features about 50 times. Let's actually do a whole bit on them now. Pretty eclectic, with Young Lean and SZA being on the same album, and Waking, because the album is extremely cohesive nonetheless, because Young Lean's only on an interlude. It's not the best interlude, but it's nice. However, some songs were basically just the features featuring Travis Scott, which was a bit of an anticlimax, especially Do Resto Echoes. SZA on Telekinesis, however, was nothing short of stunning and made you float, to coin a phrase. Tizo Touchdown on Modern Jam saves the song from being pretty average with his absolutely incredible feature, probably feature of the year, best feature in years, arguably. It's so good. And yeah, in summary, this album has an atmosphere unmatched by pretty much all hip-hop in general over the past even like a decade. And this album was just unbelievable. It's incredible in every sense of the word, with phenomenal production from Mike Dean and company, great rapping aside from maybe one or two flows from Travis, and the features did their thing. And some of the beat switches in some of the tracks, such as like the one on My Eyes, the about 50 in Schizo, the one on Meltdown, they were just too good, man. Rap album of the decade. Best rap album since probably I'd say Earl Sweatshirt with some rap songs maybe. It's better than the Forever Story before you mention that. 9.8 out of 10. So close to a 10. Right. What's dropping this week then? Pretty much nothing. That's the short form. What the fuck is the point of this? But, long answer, shout out Tyler Yue with Heart Full of Rage 2, featuring Young Blue, Chris Brown, Ty Dolla $ign, Dej Loaf, and Tusi. 16 songs, 37 minutes long. You can tell why I don't want to listen to this by the features. It's going to be pretty fucking awful. And I've already got a long enough end of year list in June. So, I think I'll let that go. In August, sorry. So, moving on to the ones I'm actually going to listen to, starting off with Yo Gotti and DJ Drama with I Showed You So, featuring Moneybagg Yo, Rich Homie Quan. Both of them twice. That's weird. 20 songs, 56 minutes long, 6 is my prediction. Moving on to BLB Kosher with Bars Mitzvah. What a terrible title to an album. Featuring Trapland Pat twice, and also Lil Tyler and DJ Premier. 19 songs, 50 minutes long, 3. Next up is TikTok sort of artist, Current Choice, has dropped a new album called Love and Pop, featuring Your Angel in the first 2 songs, Lil Yachty in the third, Odd Body in the fourth, and Brutusville and Slow Hollows further down the track list. Half an hour long, 12 songs, 6. Next up, the front bottoms with You Are Who You Hang Out With. 10 songs, 35 minutes long, is 7. Miles Kane is up next with One Man Band, featuring no one. 11 songs, 33 minutes long, 6. And finally, the only one I'm actually semi-looking forward to is Humanity's Last Breath with Ashen. 12 songs, 47 minutes long, 7. Nothing has dropped this week. Because both Quavo and Trippie Redd delayed their albums to next week. So at least we'll have a good week then. Hopefully. There you go. That is the end of the episode. Thank you very much for watching. You can tell how little is dropping this week with how quickly I ran through them. But is there anything that caught your eye? Probably not. See you next week. Before I do the top 3 and bottom 3, I thought I'd read out some bars from the Tech 9 album that came out. Just let me get them. Here we are. On the song 3D, Tech 9 says, "I'd heard you were really her man, but she really wanted my pee-wee." He also says the King, Clown and G is telling you suck 3Ds. Get it? 3D, 3Ds. If you let them, they'll 2-pack you. Deep bars there. Mwah, smooch you on the cheek. Also a bar. Steady wishing for blood and gore bad. Get it out of you, but never try to get it out a whore's ass? The fuck does that even mean? Knocking like a DoorDash, what an awful simile. I forgot about this one. And all the people laughed at me like a fart joke. I'm laughing at how shit these bars are, mate. A message to the mentally disturbed. Don't kill yourself or anyone else. Deep. And that's all I've got. I don't know why I'm saying that. Like, I'm at multiple bars. Top 3, bottom 3. Best ones. Number 3, Paris, Texas with Midair. 8.7 out of 10. Number 2 with a 9.4 out of 10 is Nas's Magic 2. But at number 1 with a 9.8 out of 10, of course it's Utopia by Travis Scott. As for the other side of the spectrum, number 3 is Nessa Barrett's Heaven as a Teenage Girl with a 1.5 out of 10. Then, in second, is DBE World by D-Block Europe, also with a 1.5 out of 10. But the worst album of the month is Sex, Money, Drugs by Lucky with a 1.3. Oof. Alright, see ya.